Alright, so you have your negatives, they're developed, they're in the clear plastic negative page. You've got the numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 arranged so that the emulsion side or the dull side is down and the shiny side is up. They're going to slightly curve away from you when you have them in there the right way. And so now what we need to do is make what's called a contact sheet or a proof sheet. And I have a handout out at the front of the lab that takes you step by step through the process of making one. So this would apply if you were just working at your own enlarger station. It talks to you about making a test strip, and it talks to you about what you're looking for in that test strip. But we've made things a little easier here. We have a station in the lab set up specifically for making contact sheets. And so this workstation, that's all that gets done here. I have a little sign that says lift glass here. You're going to lift the glass up, put your photo paper in there with your negatives on top. You're going to click that timer one time and it's going to be the correct exposure. It's going to save you a lot of time that then you can apply to crafting that perfect enlargement later once you've used your contact sheet to decide what the best image is that you would like to print. So the main thing is to just know about this is please do not adjust the height, do not adjust the aperture. Just in case that happens on accident, I have written down on this little card what the enlarger should be set at, so you can come in and kind of glance and go, okay, yeah, the toggle switch is still at 10 inches, that's what it says it should be, the timer's still set for 12 seconds, that's what it says it should be, aperture, etc. But in terms of the top bellows, if you adjust that, there's not too much of a way of fixing that. So please just let it hang out like that and just handle this area down here. So I'm going to go to lights out and just show you what that process looks like as I go. Alright, here we are. I have my sheet of photo paper. I've actually, you can tell, kind of been cheap, and I cut a little strip off the bottom. Since I only had this many negatives, this is going to fit on here just fine, and so that's what I've chosen to do. So pure and simple, we want to place the photo paper down, emulsion side facing up. We want to place our negatives emulsion side down, so it's emulsion to emulsion. That's going to give us the sharpest print, and it's going to make our images print the right way around. So remember, the emulsion side on your negatives is the non-shiny side. It should be the back of your proof sheet, or of your negative sheet. And so now we just lower the glass into place so that it's holding them all nice and flat in registration with that paper. And super simple. I'm just going to push this button and let the timer do the rest, exposing my sheet the correct amount of time. And there we go. There we go. There we go. So now I just sort of whisk my paper out from under, and let's head over to the developer. Let's see, I'm going to bring you around here. One day I'm going to be a super famous videographer, and I'm going to have like a key grip and all those people that do that stuff for you. But right now you get to have a jolty little ride. Okay, so just like any other RC paper, we're just going to put this in the developer for a minute, stop that for a minute, fix it for a minute, and we should be good to go. So the step after this is going to be to look at all the little tiny pictures that it produces and decide which negative is the one that you would like to work with. Even when students are choosing to work with film but then scan their negatives and output digitally, as long as they have a lab available to them like this, I suggest that they go ahead and still make the wet darkroom contact sheet. It's just so much quicker and easier than scanning each and every one of those negatives only to, try to discover which one they really want to keep. This will make a nice quick print all at once. There we go, of all those images. And again, don't judge it too hard while you're here in the dark. It's in the daylight that it's going to really show what you've got. Let it drip. Drop it into the next chemical. Never hurts for a little review, right? Agitate. Funny story. I had one of my undergraduate photography teachers, Gary Hubrechts, always made this joke. He said, "All right, and now you agitate the print." "You're stupid. You'll never amount to anything. Why do you even try to do these things?" Get it? Agitate. Yeah. He'd do that about the film too. It was pretty great, really. I thought it was funny. Alright, into the fixer. And if you notice, I just kind of dunked my tongs in the fixer a little bit on accident. It's not such a big deal between the two acidic chemicals, the stop bath and the fixer. It would be a big deal with the developer. Just to make a good example and make this a teachable moment, I'm going to say that if you do contaminate the tongs, swing them on down to the holding bath, give them a quick dunk, and they're ready to go back in whatever chemical they were in. They're not going to cause any trouble at all like that. Let's raise this up, shall we? For the sake of expediency, I'm just going to kind of let it have a look at fixed speed, but then we'll turn on the lights and have a look at what we've got. So let's take a look at this proof sheet. Your goal with the proof sheet is two things. One is to have nice little tiny thumbnails of all the pictures you took so that you can look at them with what we call a loupe, a little magnifying glass, and determine which ones came out the best to print, to choose to print later. It also gives you a guide about your overall quality of exposure. If you have a correctly exposed proof sheet, then all the values within the frames on the proof sheet are going to be pretty accurate and give you a feel for whether you over or underexposed the various pictures that you took. To correctly expose a proof sheet, what we want to do is look for the detail around the sprocket holes. Those are those little rectangular holes that are used to drive the film through the camera. And ideally, your proof sheet is going to be exposed so that you can barely see those sprocket holes over the black of the background itself. So we call the area around the sprocket holes base plus fog, and that really should represent the deepest shadows in your images. So if we create a proof sheet in which base plus fog is just a tiny bit lighter than full-on, all-out exposed paper black, then we know that all the individual images that were also exposed during the making of that proof sheet, they're going to have pretty accurate representations of where the highlight and the shadow areas are. So in other words, if you look at this combination of pictures, the strip on the top consists of generally much darker subject matter than the strip down below. They're both lit from light coming in a window, but you can see that the local values of the subjects are quite different. In the top, they're darker, and in the bottom, they're lighter. That's a very light yellow towel with a mostly white curtain, and up above, we've got houseplants and books. So they should look different in relation to one another if you have correctly exposed your film while it was in camera. Finally, in this little group of 4, I wanted to show you a technique you can use while you're out shooting that will just ensure that you get a good exposure that's as printable as possible when you're in the darkroom. This technique is called bracketing, and it's really simple. All you do is you expose it first, the way that your meter suggests. To the best of your ability, you use your app, you figure out what combination of shutter speed and aperture you should use. And then, just to be on the safe side, you take another picture where you give it perhaps one f-stop more exposure, and then you take another one with one f-stop less exposure. And that way, you can see in that group that I have there, I actually took it 4 times. The reason I did so was that I had this light coming in through a window. I have a backlit subject, and that can be a very tricky situation to get a correct meter reading on. Also, I was testing out a new app on my phone, and I wanted to have a sense for how well it did in situations like that. So I took those 4 different exposures. I wrote down what my aperture and shutter speed settings were for each one, and now as I look at my proof sheet, I can evaluate which one ended up being the best choice for that situation, and I'll know more how to efficiently use my meter when I go forward. So in summary, the point to making a contact sheet, which we also call a proof sheet, is to give yourself a way of quickly selecting which images you might want to work with. And then also it gives you ruthlessly truthful information about how effectively you set your exposure, focus, etc. in your camera.